A millionaire suffers a dramatic accident, and to his surprise, the nurse who comes to his rescue is none other than his ex-wife. What happens next will change everything. Buried secrets, unexpected confrontations, and a reunion that could alter the course of their lives forever. The Morgan mansion stood like a sentinel against the misty backdrop of the Massachusetts coastline, its Victorian architecture a testament to both wealth and time. The morning fog rolled in from the Atlantic, wrapping around the ornate iron gates, and manicured gardens like ghostly fingers. Inside, behind heavy velvet curtains and polished marble floors, lay a man who once commanded boardrooms and built empires. Charles Morgan, once the most influential real estate developer in Boston, now lay motionless in his specially equipped medical suite on the mansion's first floor. The room, despite its clinical purpose, maintained the elegance that characterized the rest of the house. Mahogany panels lined the walls, and crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over state-of-the-art medical equipment. Mary Bennett stood at the entrance of the mansion, her nursing bag clutched tightly in her hand. At 45, she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had weathered life's storms and emerged stronger. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a practical bun, and her green eyes held a mix of determination and apprehension. She never imagined she would return to this place, not after the way things ended with Charles 8 years ago. The heavy front door opened, revealing Michael, the elderly butler whose presence was as much a part of the mansion as its foundation. His eyes widened slightly in recognition, but his professional demeanor never wavered. "Ms. Bennett, welcome. Mrs. Morgan is expecting you in the study." The mention of Mrs. Morgan, Isabelle, not her, sent a slight tremor through Mary's composed exterior. As she followed Michael through the familiar corridors, memories flooded back. Dinner parties, quiet Sunday mornings, heated arguments, and finally, the devastating discovery of Charles's infidelity with the very woman who now bore his name. In the study, Isabelle Morgan cut an imposing figure against the backdrop of floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. At 35, she possessed the kind of beauty that turned heads and opened doors, currently wrapped in an expensive grey silk dress that probably cost more than Mary's monthly salary. Her perfectly manicured hand held a crystal glass of what appeared to be whiskey, despite the early hour. "Mary," Isabelle's voice was honey-coated steel. "How interesting to see you again. I must admit, when the agency sent over your credentials, I was tempted to reject them outright. But your experience with long-term care patients is impressive." Mary met Isabelle's gaze steadily. "I'm here for Charles, Mrs. Morgan, nothing more, nothing less." "Indeed." Isabelle moved to the window, looking out over the gardens. "You'll find him changed, of course. The accident left him completely dependent. The doctors say he's in a persistent vegetative state, though we maintain the best care possible." She turned back, her blue eyes sharp. "I trust you can maintain professional boundaries given your history?" Before Mary could respond, a soft thud echoed from somewhere upstairs, followed by the quick patter of paws. A sleek Siamese cat appeared in the doorway, its blue eyes seeming to pierce right through Mary. For a moment, she could have sworn the animal was trying to tell her something. "That's Artemis," Isabelle said dismissively. "Charles's pet. The creature rarely leaves his side these days. Shall we proceed to your duties?" Mary nodded, steeling herself for what lay ahead. As she followed Isabelle out of the study, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Charles's condition than she was being told. The mansion's opulent corridors seemed to whisper secrets, and Mary Bennett, ex-wife, nurse, and now unexpected ally, was determined to uncover them all. The medical suite's door opened with a soft click, and Mary's breath caught in her throat. Despite her years of professional experience, nothing could have prepared her for this moment. Charles Morgan, the man who had once filled every room with his commanding presence, lay still against crisp white sheets, his once robust frame now thin and pale. The morning light filtered through sheer curtains, casting gentle shadows across his face. His dark hair, now streaked with silver at the temples, was neatly combed. Someone, probably the previous nurse, had taken care to maintain his appearance, trimming his beard and keeping him looking as dignified as possible. "The day nurse arrives at 7 and leaves at 7, Isabelle explained mechanically, consulting her phone. "You'll take the night shift. All medications are logged in the system and emergency contacts are posted by the phone. Dr. Harrison makes weekly visits, but he's on call if needed." She paused, examining her manicure. "I trust you can handle the rest?" Mary nodded, her eyes never leaving Charles. "Yes, I've reviewed his charts. I'll need his complete medical history and accident report. Talk to Robert Gaines, our lawyer. He handles all the paperwork." Isabelle's heels clicked against the hardwood floor as she moved toward the door. "Oh, and Mary, remember, he can't hear or understand anything. The doctors are quite certain about that." As Isabelle's footsteps faded down the hallway, Mary approached Charles's bedside. The sophisticated medical equipment hummed softly, monitoring his vital signs. Everything appeared normal, heart rate steady, oxygen levels optimal. Yet something felt off, though Mary couldn't quite place what. "Hello, Charles," she said softly, pulling on latex gloves. "I'm going to check your vitals now." As she leaned over to check his pupils' response to light, she noticed his eyes, those familiar hazel eyes that once sparkled with ambition and wit, following her movement. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but Mary had spent enough time with patients to know the difference between random eye movement and focused tracking. Artemis jumped onto the bed, settling near Charles's feet. The cat's penetrating gaze shifted between Charles and Mary, tail twitching occasionally. Mary remembered how Charles had always claimed that cats were more perceptive than humans, more attuned to the unseen. She had dismissed it as fancy back then, but now... As she worked through her initial assessment, Mary spoke quietly about neutral topics, the weather, the garden visible from his window, the gentle sound of waves in the distance. It was a technique she often used with patients, but this time it felt different, more personal, more painful. "Your heart rate elevates slightly when I mention the garden," she noted, watching the monitors. "You always loved spending time there." She paused, remembering Sunday mornings when they would drink coffee among the roses, planning their future. Before everything fell apart, a slight movement caught her attention. Charles's index finger had twitched. According to his charts, he hadn't shown any voluntary movement since the accident. Mary quickly documented the observation in her notes, careful to keep her writing professional and objective. As she organized the medical supplies in the cabinet, she discovered a small notebook wedged behind some bandages. It was a visitor's log, but several pages had been torn out. On the last remaining page, a hastily scribbled note caught her attention. "Patient exhibited unusual response during cognitive assessment. Further testing recommended." The entry was dated just 3 days before the previous nurse's sudden departure. The sound of approaching footsteps made Mary quickly replace the notebook. Robert Gaines, Charles's lawyer, appeared in the doorway, a tall man with silver hair and rimless glasses, wearing an impeccably tailored suit. "Ms. Bennett," he smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "I have the paperwork you requested. Shall we discuss it in the study? Some of these matters require discretion." Mary glanced at Charles one last time before following Robert out. For a moment she could have sworn she saw Charles's hand move again, this time as if reaching out. But when she looked back, everything was still, save for Artemis's unwavering stare and the steady beep of the heart monitor, its rhythm now slightly faster than before. The study felt more like an interrogation room as Robert Gaines spread out Charles's medical files across the antique mahogany desk. Evening shadows crept across the room, and a grandfather clock in the corner marked each passing second with methodical precision. The accident occurred 6 months ago, Robert explained, his voice carrying the practiced neutrality of a seasoned lawyer. Mr. Morgan was driving home from a board meeting when his car veered off Mountain Ridge Road. The vehicle was found at the bottom of a ravine. He slid a police report across the desk. He was alone in the car. Mary studied the documents, her nursing training allowing her to read between the lines of the medical jargon. The initial trauma doesn't fully account for his current condition, she observed, pointing to specific entries. These neurological readings... Dr. Harrison has been very thorough in his assessment, Robert interrupted smoothly. I assure you, everything has been properly documented. I'd like to speak with Dr. Harrison directly, Mary said. Some of these treatment protocols seem unusual for a patient in Charles's condition. Robert's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Dr. Harrison is currently at a conference in Switzerland. He'll return next week. He gathered the papers with practiced efficiency. Now, about the confidentiality agreement. A soft knock interrupted them. Michael, the butler, stood in the doorway. Pardon the interruption, but Mrs. Morgan requests Mr. Gaines's presence in the conservatory. After Robert left, Mary remained in the study, her mind racing. She approached the built-in bookshelf where she'd noticed Charles's business books earlier. Running her fingers along the spines, she remembered how he used to spend hours here, building his empire one deal at a time. A leather-bound volume caught her attention. It was slightly out of alignment with the others. Pulling it out, she discovered it wasn't a book at all, but a cleverly disguised safe. The combination lock stared back at her like a challenge. He changed it every month. Michael's quiet voice made her jump. The elderly butler had returned silently, always, to something meaningful. His eyes held a knowing look. The last time was the day before the accident. Mary's heart quickened. Michael, how long have you worked for Charles? 23 years, he replied, carefully closing the study door. I've seen many changes in this house, Miss Bennett. Not all of them for the better. He glanced meaningfully at a silver-framed photograph on the desk. Charles and Isabelle at their wedding 2 years ago. Mrs. Morgan has made numerous modifications since the accident. Staff changes, security upgrades, new financial arrangements. The previous nurse, Mary ventured. Why did she leave so suddenly? Michael's expression remained carefully neutral. Sarah was very diligent, perhaps too diligent in her observations. He straightened his tie. She left the day after she had a long conversation with Mrs. Morgan and Mr. Gaines. Most of her personal belongings are still in her room. Before Mary could probe further, the sound of Artemis's bell echoed through the hallway, followed by the cat's urgent meowing. Mr. Morgan's vitals monitor, Michael explained. The cat always knows when something's amiss. If you'll excuse me, I believe your presence is required. Mary hurried to Charles's room, her mind processing everything she'd learned. The medical inconsistencies, Robert's evasiveness, the missing nurse, Michael's careful hints. Something was very wrong in the Morgan mansion. She found Charles with slightly elevated vital signs, though nothing alarming. As she checked his pupils, his eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that seemed impossible for someone in a vegetative state. Artemis sat on the windowsill, watching, them both with unblinking eyes. What are you trying to tell me, Charles? Mary whispered, more to herself than to him. To her astonishment, his right hand twitched, fingers moving in what almost looked like a pattern. 1 tap, pause, 2 taps, pause, 1 tap. The sound of high heels in the hallway made Mary quickly step back. She grabbed her notebook, jotting down the sequence of taps just as Isabelle appeared in the doorway. Is everything all right? Isabelle asked, her voice honeyed with concern that didn't reach her eyes. I heard the monitor. Just a routine fluctuation, Mary replied calmly. Nothing to worry about. As Isabelle nodded and turned to leave, Mary caught a glimpse of her phone screen. She was texting someone. She's getting too close. We need to move faster. Mary's pulse quickened, but her face remained professionally neutral. Whatever. Game was being played in this mansion. She was now certain of one thing. Charles Morgan wasn't just a patient anymore. He was trying to communicate, and she might be his only hope of uncovering the truth. During her third night shift, Mary sat beside Charles's bed, reviewing her notes about the tapping pattern she'd observed. The mansion was quiet, save for the gentle hum of medical equipment and the occasional creak of old wood settling. Artemis lay curled at Charles's feet, purring softly. 1, 2, 1, she murmured, studying the sequence she'd documented. It's deliberate, isn't it? You're trying to tell me something. She watched Charles's face carefully in the soft lamplight, noting how his eyes seemed more focused than they had been during her initial assessment. Mary reached for her phone and opened a Morse code reference guide, something that had occurred to her during her off-hours research. As she studied the patterns, a memory surfaced. Charles teaching her about codes during their marriage, his fascination with puzzles and cryptography, the way he'd incorporated secret messages into their anniversary cards. Charles, she whispered, leaning closer, if you can understand me, look at the window. There was a slight pause, then his eyes slowly but deliberately moved toward the window. Mary's heart raced. Now look at Artemis. Again, his eyes moved. With purpose, fighting to maintain her professional composure, Mary pulled out a small notepad. I'm going to go through the alphabet. Blink once for each letter you want to select. It was a painstaking process, but after several minutes, she had spelled out safe diary. The implications of these two words sent a chill down her spine. Charles was not only conscious, but fully aware of his surroundings, and he was directing her to something specific, presumably the safe she'd discovered in the study. A floorboard creaked in the hallway. Mary quickly tucked away her notepad and pretended to be adjusting Charles's IV when Isabelle appeared in the doorway, wearing an elegant evening robe. Unable to sleep? Mary asked casually. I heard voices, Isabelle replied, her eyes scanning the room. Were you talking to someone? I often talk to my patients, Mary explained. It's good practice, even if they can't respond. Studies show it can help with brain activity. Isabelle's perfectly shaped eyebrows arched. How dedicated of you. But please keep it down. Sound carries strangely in this old house. She lingered in the doorway. By the way, Dr. Harrison's return has been delayed. He's extending his stay in Switzerland indefinitely. After Isabelle left, Mary waited several minutes before returning to Charles. The safe in the study, she whispered. I need the combination. Over the next hour, through their painstaking communication method, Charles gave her a series of numbers, 8, 15, 19. August 15th, the day they had first met, 19 years ago. Mary felt a tightness in her throat. Even after everything that had happened between them, he had chosen their beginning as his final safe combination. The next morning, Mary made a point of asking Michael about the mansion's history, carefully, steering the conversation toward the study. The original blueprints might help me understand the best way to arrange Charles's therapy equipment, she suggested. Michael's eyes twinkled with understanding. The old house plans are kept in the study. You might find them interesting, especially during your break hours. He paused meaningfully. Mrs. Morgan and Mr. Gaines will be attending a hospital board meeting this afternoon. Mary spent her break time examining the study, aware that this might be her only chance to access the safe. She found it exactly where she'd spotted it before, hidden behind the false book. Her hands trembled slightly as she input the combination, 8 to 1519. The safe opened with a soft click. Inside, she found a leather-bound diary and a USB drive. Just as she was about to reach for them, she heard Artemis's warning meow from the hallway, followed by the distinct sound of heels on hardwood. Making a split-second decision, Mary quickly photographed several pages of the diary with her phone, then carefully closed the safe. She had just returned the false book to its position when Isabelle swept into the study. "Mary, what are you doing here?" "Looking for those blueprints Michael mentioned," Mary replied smoothly, gesturing to the architectural drawings she'd left purposefully spread on the desk. "I'm thinking about suggesting some room modifications that might help with Charles's therapy." Isabelle's smile was razor-thin. "How thoughtful. But perhaps you should focus on your primary duties. We wouldn't want you to become overwhelmed." That evening, as Mary reviewed the photographs she'd managed to take, her blood ran cold. The diary entries detailed Charles's growing suspicions about financial irregularities in his companies and his concerns about Isabelle's increasingly secretive meetings with Robert Gaines. The final entry, dated the day before his accident, was particularly chilling. "Evidence compiled, meeting with SEC tomorrow, must act quickly before they can..." The entry ended there, as if written in haste or interrupted. Mary looked up at Charles, who was watching her intently. In that moment, she realized that what had started as a nursing assignment had become something far more dangerous and far more important. Whatever had happened to Charles Morgan hadn't been an accident, and the truth hidden in that diary might be worth far more than just his fortune. The pages of Charles's diary haunted Mary's thoughts as she drove to meet Lucas Chen, her longtime friend and legal advisor, at a small cafe 20 miles from the Morgan estate. The coastal morning fog provided welcome cover, making her feel less exposed than she had in the mansion's crystal-clear surveillance cameras. Lucas was already waiting in a corner booth, his laptop open and reading glasses perched on his nose. At 48, he had built a reputation as one of Boston's most meticulous corporate lawyers, though he preferred to maintain a low profile. "These financial records you sent me," he began without preamble, keeping his voice low. "They're fascinating. The pattern of transfers is incredibly sophisticated, designed to look legitimate unless you know exactly what you're looking for." Mary sipped her coffee, letting the warmth steady her nerves. "Can you prove anything?" "Not yet, but look at this." He turned his laptop to show her a complex diagram of interconnected companies. "These shell corporations all lead back to a holding company in the Cayman Islands. And guess who sits on its board? Robert Gaines." "Charles was going to expose them," Mary murmured, thinking of the diary's final entry. "He was meeting with the SEC the next day. A meeting he never made it to," Lucas noted grimly. "Mary, this is bigger than just embezzlement. These transactions, they suggest money laundering on a massive scale. Whoever's behind this has powerful connections." Their conversation was interrupted by Mary's phone buzzing, a text from Michael. "Mrs. M found something missing from study. Coming to your room. Hurry back." Mary's heart raced as she rushed back to the mansion, making it to her room, just minutes before she heard Isabelle's distinctive footsteps in the hallway. She had barely pulled out her nursing textbooks when there was a sharp knock at her door. Isabelle entered like royalty, conducting an inspection, her eyes scanning every surface. "Mary, have you been in the study recently, besides your architectural research?" "No," Mary replied steadily. "I've been focused on Charles's care. His responses to stimuli have been showing interesting patterns." Something flickered in Isabelle's eyes. "Oh, what kind of patterns?" "Small muscle movements, eye tracking, standard indicators we look for in patients with his condition." Mary kept her tone professional, clinical. "Would you like to see my notes?" "That won't be necessary." Isabelle moved to the window, looking out over the gardens. "You know, Mary, I've been thinking about Charles's care schedule. Perhaps it would be better to rotate nurses more frequently, to avoid emotional attachments." The threat was clear, but before Mary could respond, they heard a commotion from Charles's room. They rushed in to find Artemis had knocked over a vase, spilling water across several medical charts. As Mary cleaned up the mess, she noticed Charles's heart rate had increased significantly. "Just the excitement," she assured Isabelle. "I'll stay with him until he calms down." After Isabelle left, Mary checked the scattered papers and realized why Charles had gotten agitated. Hidden beneath the medical charts was a document showing recent changes to his power of attorney, giving Isabelle complete control over not just his medical decisions, but his entire business empire. That night, during their now routine communication session, Charles blinked out a new message. "Harrison knows." "Dr. Harrison?" Mary whispered. "The one in Switzerland?" Charles's eyes moved deliberately. No Switzerland. Basement. Mary felt her blood run cold. "Are you saying Dr. Harrison never left the country?" One clear blink. Yes, the implications were staggering. If Dr. Harrison was being held somewhere in the mansion, or worse, it meant Isabelle and Robert were capable of far more than just financial fraud. A sudden noise from the hallway made Mary freeze. Through the partially open door, she caught a glimpse of Robert Gaines speaking intensely with someone on his phone. "It's becoming a problem. No, we can't wait any longer. Yes, just like the last one." Mary's hand found Charles's, and for a moment she felt his fingers press ever so slightly against hers. In that touch was a lifetime of history, love, betrayal, regret, and now perhaps redemption. But first, they had to survive what was coming. Because one thing was becoming terrifyingly clear. Sarah, the previous nurse, hadn't simply left her job, and if Mary wasn't careful, she might meet the same fate. The Morgan Mansion's basement was a maze of corridors dating back to the 1890s, when the house was first built. Mary made her way down the narrow service stairs, flashlight beam dancing across stone walls. Michael had slipped her a ring of old keys during dinner, accompanied by a hand-drawn map showing passages that weren't on the official blueprints. "The East Wing was sealed off decades ago," he had whispered. "Or so they say." Now, at 2 in the morning, Mary understood why Charles had directed her here. The basement's layout was strange. Measurements that didn't quite add up. Walls that seemed thicker than necessary, perfect for hiding secrets or people. Her footsteps echoed softly despite her careful tread. The air grew colder as she moved deeper into the basement's labyrinth. Her flashlight revealed shelves of dusty wine bottles, crates of financial records, and something else. Fresh scuff marks on the floor, leading to what appeared to be a solid wall. Mary ran her hands along the wall's surface, remembering Charles's old stories about Prohibition-era hidden rooms. Her fingers found a slight depression, and with careful pressure, a section of the wall swung inward silently on well-oiled hinges. Beyond lay a narrow corridor with a modern keypad lock on a heavy door. Mary's heart pounded as she pulled out her phone and opened the photos she'd taken of Charles's diary. She'd noticed numbers scribbled in the margins. They had seemed random at the time, but now the keypad accepted the sequence. 73942. Inside, she found a small room equipped with basic medical supplies and a cot. No Dr. Harrison, but clear signs of recent occupation, a half-drunk glass of water, wrinkled sheets, and a notebook filled with hasty medical observations. Mary photographed several pages of the notebook. The entries confirmed her worst fears, detailed notes about Charles's treatment, followed by increasingly agitated observations about unexplained injections ordered by Isabelle, and finally, a scrawled warning: they're tampering with his medication. Not just sedation, something else. Need to contact authorities, but phones monitored, seem showing signs of... The entry ended abruptly. A sudden noise made Mary whirl around. Artemis stood in the doorway, tail puffed up. The cat's presence here wasn't reassuring. Something had spooked it enough to leave Charles's side. Mary quickly retreated, closing both doors behind her. She had nearly reached the stairs when she heard voices. Ducking behind a large wine rack, she held her breath as Isabelle and Robert descended into the basement. "The board is getting nervous," Robert was saying. "Peter's called today. He wants proof that Charles is truly incapacitated before he'll approve the merger." "That's what Dr. Harrison was supposed to provide," Isabelle snapped, "before he developed a conscience." "He's secure for now," Robert assured her. "Once the merger goes through next week, we can tie up all our loose ends, including our dear doctor. And what about the nurse? She's becoming a liability. I've made arrangements. Tomorrow night, it'll look like an accident, just like Charles's." Mary's hand clamped over her mouth to stifle a gasp. Artemis, still by her side, pressed against her leg as if offering support. "Speaking of Charles," Isabelle's voice grew thoughtful, "increase his evening dosage. He seems more aware lately. We can't risk him communicating somehow. Not when we're this close." Their footsteps and voices faded as they returned. Upstairs, Mary waited several minutes before moving, her mind racing. She had evidence now: Dr. Harrison's notes, Charles's diary, the hidden room. But she also had less than 24 hours before arrangements were made for her. When she finally returned to Charles's room, she found him agitated, his heart rate elevated. She quickly checked his IV line and discovered a new bag had been added during her absence. "I'm removing this," she whispered, carefully taking down the suspicious IV. "I know about Dr. Harrison's notes. Whatever they're giving you, it stops now." Charles's eyes found hers, and in them she saw something she hadn't seen before. Fear. Not for himself, she realized, but for her. His finger tapped against the sheet. "Safe you first." Mary took his hand, feeling the weak but deliberate pressure of his fingers. "No," she said firmly. "We're in this together, just like we should have been all along." As she adjusted his blankets, she noticed something tucked beneath his pillow, a small USB drive, identical to the one she'd seen in the safe. Michael must have managed to slip it to him during evening care. Another piece of evidence, another secret to protect. Dawn was approaching, and with it would come Isabelle's arrangements. Mary had precious few hours to act, to save herself, to save Charles, and to expose the truth. But first, she needed to get help. Someone with the power to protect them. Both. She carefully tucked the USB drive into her shoe and began her preparations. Tomorrow would decide everything, and this time, she wouldn't let Charles down. The morning brought a deceptive calm to the Morgan mansion. Mary watched the sunrise from Charles's room, her mind working through each step of what needed to be done. She had sent the basement photos and Dr. Harrison's notes to Lucas overnight, along with a video she'd secretly recorded of Charles responding to her questions through blinks. Her phone buzzed with Lucas's response. "Evidence solid. SEC contact. Ready to meet, but needs more financial trails. Can you get access to RG's laptop?" Mary glanced at Charles, who had finally drifted into natural sleep after she'd removed the suspicious IV. The regular day nurse would arrive soon, and Mary knew she should go rest during her off hours. Instead, she headed to the mansion's kitchen, where Michael was preparing breakfast. "Coffee, Miss Bennett," he offered, his eyes conveying much more than the simple question. When Mary nodded, he placed the cup on a silver tray, along with a small USB device barely visible beneath a napkin. "Mrs. Morgan and Mr. Gaines are taking their breakfast in the study. They've been reviewing contracts all morning." Mary understood. Immediately, Robert's laptop would be there, possibly unlocked during their working breakfast. "Thank you, Michael. I should bring them fresh coffee, shouldn't I? They must be tired from working so early." She made her way to the study, balancing. the tray carefully. Through the partially open door, she could hear Isabelle and Robert arguing in hushed tones. "The board meeting is tomorrow," Isabelle was saying. "We need those signatures today." "Peters is still hesitating," Robert replied. "He wants to see Charles himself." "Impossible. He's heavily sedated." Isabelle stopped as Mary entered, with the coffee tray. "I thought you might need a refresh," Mary said pleasantly, noting Robert's laptop open on the desk, spreadsheets visible on the screen. As she set down the cups, her hand trembled slightly, spilling coffee across the desk. "Oh, I'm so sorry." She quickly grabbed napkins, creating enough confusion to slip the USB drive into the laptop's port while cleaning up. Years of precise movements as a nurse made the action smooth, unnoticeable. "How clumsy," Isabelle remarked coldly. "Perhaps you're overtired. You should rest before your shift tonight." The emphasis on "tonight" sent a chill down Mary's spine, but she maintained her apologetic smile and left the room. Back in the kitchen, she watched the clock anxiously. The USB device Lucas had provided needed only 3 minutes to copy all recent files. When she returned to collect the cups 10 minutes later, she found the study empty. Perfect. She retrieved the USB drive and slipped it into her pocket, her heart racing, but her movements calm and purposeful. The rest of the morning passed in, a blur of preparation. She contacted the few staff members she trusted, arranging subtle shifts in the night's duty roster. She made a show of carrying her nursing bag to her car, as if preparing to leave for her rest period, but actually hiding crucial evidence and a change of clothes in the trunk. Just before leaving, she visited Charles one last time. They stuck. Nurse was on her lunch break, giving them a precious few minutes alone. "I've set everything in motion," she whispered, pretending to check his vitals. "Lucas has the evidence. We just need to hold on until tonight." Charles's eyes showed clear, understanding, but also urgent concern. His finger tapped, "Careful trap." "I know," she assured him, "but they don't know what we know, or who we have on our side." A noise in the hallway made her step back, just as Isabelle entered the room. "Mary? I thought you'd left for the day." "Just finishing my handover notes," Mary replied, holding up her medical chart. "Actually, I wanted to ask you about tonight's medication schedule. Dr. Harrison usually reviews any changes, but since he's away..." "I'll have Robert handle it," Isabelle said smoothly. "He has medical power of attorney now, after all. Speaking of tonight, I've arranged for a special delivery of medical supplies. Could you meet our supplier at the back entrance? Say, around midnight." The trap was obvious, almost insultingly so. Mary nodded, playing her role. "Of course. Will Robert be there to sign for it?" "Oh, yes." Isabelle smiled, all teeth and cold eyes. "Robert will definitely be there." After Mary left, she drove her car to the predetermined meeting spot where Lucas was waiting. She handed over the USB drive and quickly detailed Isabelle's suspicious request for a midnight meeting. "It's a setup," Lucas agreed, already examining the files from Robert's laptop, "but it might work in our favor. I've contacted someone who can help, someone with a personal stake in exposing Isabelle and Robert." "Who?" "Sarah Thompson." Mary's eyes widened. "The previous nurse? But she disappeared." "Not disappeared," Lucas corrected. "Hidden. After what she discovered, she knew she needed proof before coming forward. She's been gathering evidence for months, and now, with what you've found..." He smiled grimly. "Let's just say, midnight is going to be interesting for everyone." As Mary drove back to the mansion for her night shift, storm clouds gathered over the Atlantic, promising a tumultuous night ahead. She touched the small recorder hidden in her uniform pocket and thought of Charles, fighting through drug-induced fog to warn her, to protect her even in his vulnerable state. Tonight would end it all, one way or another. The only question was, who would be left standing when the storm cleared? Thunder rolled across the Massachusetts coast, as Mary began her evening rounds. The mansion's corridors felt different. Tonight, every shadow seemed to hold secrets. Every creak of old wood carried warning. She had arrived early for her shift, using the time to carefully check Charles's room for any new surveillance devices Isabelle might have planted. The regular evening nurse, Jenny, was just finishing up her shift. Mrs. Morgan changed his medication schedule, Jenny mentioned, showing Mary the chart. She said it came from Dr. Harrison via email. "I'll handle it," Mary assured her, noting how the new schedule would have Charles heavily sedated by midnight. Not coincidentally, she was sure. After Jenny left, Mary secured the door and quickly examined Charles. His eyes were clear. She had been carefully diluting the suspicious medications over the past day, keeping him more alert than Isabelle and Robert realized. "They're planning something for midnight," she whispered, pretending to adjust his pillows. "But so are we. Sarah Thompson is alive, Charles. She's been gathering evidence." His eyes widened slightly at this news. His finger tapped against the cue sheet, basement south. Mary frowned. "There's something else in the basement in the south wing?" "Yes. Proof all." Before she could ask more, Artemis suddenly leaped from his usual spot by the window, fur bristling. Seconds later, Isabelle's voice carried down the hallway, accompanied by unfamiliar footsteps. "The new security system is excellent, Mr. Peters," Isabelle was saying. "We spare no expense in ensuring Charles's safety." Mary quickly stepped back from Charles's bed as Isabelle entered with an elderly man in an expensive suit, clearly the hesitant board member they'd discussed earlier. "Mr. Peters wanted to see Charles for himself," Isabelle explained, her smile not quite reaching her eyes, "to understand why tomorrow's board meeting is so crucial." Peters approached the bed, studying Charles with genuine concern. "How long has he been in this state?" 6 months, Isabelle sighed dramatically. "The doctors say there's no hope of recovery. That's why these business decisions can't wait any longer. The company needs strong leadership." Mary watched as Peters leaned closer to Charles, noting how Charles deliberately kept his eyes unfocused, maintaining the illusion of unconsciousness. She saw the slight tension in his jaw, the effort it took to appear completely passive. "His care seems excellent," Peters observed, turning to Mary. "You're his night nurse?" "Yes, sir, Mary takes her duties very seriously," Isabelle interrupted smoothly. "Sometimes a bit too seriously. In fact, we're making some staffing changes soon." The threat hung in the air like the thunder outside. Peters seemed oblivious to the tension, but Mary noticed Charles's heart rate monitor showing a slight increase. After they left, Mary waited several minutes before returning to Charles's side. "What's in the south basement?" she whispered urgently. "Safe room," he tapped. "Old plans, proof money." A sudden draft made the curtains flutter, and Mary turned to find Michael in the doorway. The elderly butler glanced down the hallway before entering. "The south basement was Mr. Morgan's private vault," he explained quietly. "From the old days, when banks couldn't be trusted. He converted it years ago to store sensitive documents." Michael pressed a key into Mary's hand. "Mrs. Morgan never found it, but tonight they're doing a thorough search of the entire basement." Mary understood immediately. Whatever evidence Charles had hidden about their financial schemes, Isabelle and Robert were planning to find and destroy it before the board meeting tomorrow. "That's why they set up the midnight meeting," she realized, "to get me out of the way while they search." Charles's heart rate increased again, and this time Mary saw real fear in his eyes. His finger tapped urgently, "Sarah trapped." "What do you mean?" Mary asked, but Charles was becoming agitated, his movements more desperate. They knew, waiting, trap all. The implications hit Mary like ice water. If Isabelle and Robert knew about Sarah, knew she was coming tonight. The midnight meeting wasn't just a trap for Mary. It was a trap for everyone who threatened to expose them. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating Artemis as he paced by the window. The storm was getting closer, both literally and figuratively. Mary had 4 hours until midnight, and now she realized she wasn't just trying to save herself and Charles. She had to somehow warn Sarah and Lucas before they walked into a trap that had been waiting for them all along. She looked at Charles, saw the same determination in his eyes that she felt. Tonight would decide everything, but the game had changed. It wasn't just about gathering evidence anymore. It was about survival. The storm intensified as the clock crept toward midnight. Mary paced in Charles's room, her mind racing through possibilities while rain lashed against the windows. Her phone showed no signal. The storm, perhaps, or something more sinister. She couldn't reach Lucas or Sarah to warn them. "I have to get to that vault," she whispered to Charles. "But I can't leave you unprotected. Not with them searching the house." Charles' eyes followed her movement, his concern evident. His finger tapped slowly. "Michael Friends." As if summoned by Charles's message, Michael appeared at the door with Jenny, the evening nurse who had left earlier. "Ms. Bennett," Michael said quietly, "Jenny has returned to assist. She's an old friend of Sarah's." Jenny stepped forward, her earlier timid demeanor replaced with quiet determination. "Sarah told me everything before she went into hiding. I've been watching, waiting for a chance to help." Mary felt a surge of hope. More allies, more pieces falling into place, but they had to move carefully. Isabelle and Robert had already proven they were thinking several steps ahead. "They'll be expecting me at the back entrance at midnight," Mary said, quickly outlining what they knew about the trap and the vault. "We need to split up. Jenny, can you stay with Charles? Michael, I need you to create a distraction when the time comes." Thunder crashed overhead as they refined their plan. Mary changed into dark clothes, better suited for moving through the shadowy basement. She tucked Charles's USB drive and the vault key securely in an inner pocket. "Remember," she told Jenny, "if anyone but me tries to adjust his medication—" "I know," Jenny assured her. "I've been diluting the suspicious IVs for weeks. It's why he's more alert than they realize." Mary turned to Charles, whose eyes held a mixture of worry and resolve. "I'll be back," she promised. "We're ending this tonight." "Careful," he tapped. Robert armed. The warning sent a chill down her spine, but there was no turning back now. She checked her watch. 11:15 p.m. Time to move. The mansion's security system had been upgraded recently, another detail that now seemed suspicious. Mary used her nurse's access card to move through the corridors, knowing each swipe was probably being logged. Let them track her, she thought. It was part of the plan. She made her way to the main basement entrance, making sure the security cameras caught her. Then, using the route Michael had shown her, she doubled back through a servant's passage, emerging near the sealed south wing. The key Michael had given her fit perfectly into a lock that looked like it hadn't been used in years. The south basement was different from the rest, older, with stone walls that predated the mansion's reconstruction. Her flashlight beam revealed vault-like doors set into the walls, remnants of the days when wealthy families didn't trust banks with their treasures. A noise from above made her freeze. Through the old air vents, she could hear Robert's voice. "The south wing is sealed off. She won't think to look there." "Don't underestimate her," Isabelle replied. "Not after what happened with Sarah. Is everything ready at the back entrance?" "Peters is taken care of, sleeping peacefully in his hotel room. He won't make it to tomorrow's board meeting. Our people are in position. Once we deal with Mary and Sarah—" Their voices faded, but Mary had heard enough. They weren't just planning to stop her. They had somehow neutralized Peters, removing the last obstacle to their takeover of Charles's company. She found the vault Charles had mentioned, its heavy door concealed behind wooden panels. The mechanism was complex, not just a key, but a sequence of turns and pressures. She recalled Charles's love of puzzles, how he'd always built multiple layers of security into everything important. Inside, she discovered filing cabinets filled with documents, financial records, corporate transfers, offshore accounts. Everything needed to expose Isabelle and Robert's scheme. But something else caught her eye, a medical file labeled Project Revival. As she read, her blood ran cold. The file detailed an elaborate plan spanning years. Charles's accident hadn't been a simple attempt to take control of his company. It was part of a larger scheme involving experimental drugs, faked medical records, and a network of corrupt healthcare providers. They had been testing the drugs on patients across multiple facilities, creating a pharmaceutical fraud worth billions. A sudden draft made her spin around. In the doorway stood Dr. Harrison, looking haggard but very much alive. "They'll be coming soon," he said hoarsely. "We don't have much time." Mary's mind raced, processing this new development. The drugs they're giving Charles? Designed to keep him conscious but paralyzed, Harrison confirmed. "I developed them, God help me, when I realized how they were being used." He swallowed hard. "Sarah helped me fake my disappearance, but they caught me trying to gather evidence." Before Mary could respond, a distant door slammed. Footsteps echoed through the basement corridors, multiple sets, moving with purpose. The time for gathering evidence was over. Now it was about survival. But as Mary clutched the damning files and faced the approaching footsteps, she allowed herself a small smile. Because Isabelle and Robert had made one crucial mistake in their careful planning. They had underestimated just how far a person would go to protect someone they loved. And Mary wasn't about to let them hurt Charles again. Lightning illuminated the basement corridors through the ground-level windows as Mary and Dr. Harrison quickly gathered the most crucial evidence. The approaching footsteps echoed closer, accompanied by the crackle of security radios. "There's another way out," Harrison whispered, pointing to a narrow passage behind the vault. "The old coal delivery tunnel. It leads to the boathouse." Mary quickly photographed the remaining documents with her phone. "What about Sarah? She's walking into their trap at the back entrance." "Sarah's smarter than they realize." Harrison managed a weak smile. "Trust me." Upstairs, in Charles's room, Jenny was maintaining a calm facade as she checked his vital signs, though her hands trembled slightly. Through the window, she could see dark figures moving into position around the mansion's grounds. "Michael's in place," she murmured to Charles. "Are you sure you can manage it?" Charles blinked once firmly. "Yes." His eyes moved deliberately toward the medicine cart. Isabelle's voice carried down the hallway. "Check on my husband. Make sure he's comfortable." In the basement, Mary and Harrison hurried through the narrow tunnel, their way lit only by Mary's phone. The storm's fury was more evident here. Water trickled down the walls, and the wind howled through ancient ventilation shafts. "Why did you develop these drugs?" Mary asked as they moved, needing to understand. "They were meant to help coma patients." Harrison's voice was heavy with regret. "A way to maintain cognitive function during physical recovery." But Isabelle and Robert saw other possibilities, keeping inconvenient people quiet, making them appear vegetative while remaining fully aware. He shuddered. "When I threatened to expose them, they staged Charles's accident as a demonstration." A crash echoed behind them. Their pursuers had found the tunnel entrance. Mary's phone buzzed with a text from Jenny. "Visitors coming, starting now." In Charles's room, Jenny made a show of dropping a glass of water, just as two security guards entered. As she cleaned up the mess, Charles's monitors suddenly began blaring alerts. "His vitals are crashing," Jenny called out in manufactured panic. "Get Mrs. Morgan." The guards rushed to find Isabelle, leaving Jenny alone with Charles. Working quickly, she disconnected the sensors that would give away his true condition and helped him sit up slightly, the result of weeks of secret physical therapy during her evening shifts. Meanwhile, Mary and Harrison reached the boathouse. Rain poured through the wooden slats above them as they caught their breath in the Darkness. We need to get to the authorities, Harrison said, before they can destroy more evidence. No, Mary replied firmly. We need to get back to Charles. They'll take him or worse once they realize we have proof. A voice cut through the storm. That's far enough. Robert Gaines stepped from the shadows, gun raised. The evidence, please. But before he could move closer, another voice spoke. Federal agents, drop your weapon. Sarah Thompson emerged from behind a boat rack, accompanied by 2 FBI agents. With raised weapons, her face showed grim satisfaction. Sorry I'm late, had to make sure my backup was in place. Robert's gun wavered, but his smile remained confident. You're too late. By now, Isabelle has already... A sudden commotion from the mansion interrupted him. Emergency lights were flashing in Charles's window. In the confusion, Robert fired his gun toward Mary and Harrison. They dove behind a stack of crates. As the FBI agents returned fire, Sarah pulled them toward a side door. My people are moving in, but we need to get back to Charles. They raced through the rain toward the mansion. Inside, they found chaos. Michael had accidentally triggered fire alarms throughout the building, filling the corridors with staff and security personnel trying to follow emergency protocols. Mary led them toward Charles's room, her heart pounding. They found Jenny, helping Charles sit upright in his bed, his eyes alert and focused, despite the effort it clearly cost him. Isabelle stood in the doorway, her composure finally cracking as she took in the scene. How? She gasped. You weren't the only one with a long-term plan, Jenny said coldly. Isabelle reached into her jacket, but before she could withdraw, what was surely another weapon, Sarah's FBI agents were there, weapons drawn. Isabelle Morgan, you're under arrest. You don't understand. Isabelle's voice took on a desperate edge. We built something extraordinary. The drugs, the trials, we're on the verge of a breakthrough that could revolutionize medicine. By experimenting on unwilling patients? Harrison stepped forward. By destroying lives. By doing what was necessary, she spat. Charles never understood that. He wanted everything done by the books, through proper channels. Do you know how long that would have taken? How many people died waiting for treatments to be approved? So you tried to kill him instead. Mary moved to Charles's side, taking his hand. To steal his company and continue your illegal trials. He didn't give us a choice, Robert's voice came from the doorway. Despite being handcuffed, he maintained his arrogant bearing. He was going to expose everything. All our work, all our progress, lost to bureaucratic cowardice. Charles's finger tapped against Mary's hand. Wrong choice. Yes, she smiled, at him. They made the wrong choice, and now they'll face the consequences. As Isabelle and Robert were led away, Mary turned her attention to Charles. The effort of maintaining consciousness was clearly exhausting him, but his eyes were bright with triumph and something else, something that made Mary's heart skip a beat. The storm outside was beginning to fade, its fury spent. But inside, the Morgan mansion, as FBI agents collected evidence and medical personnel attended to Charles, Mary knew that some storms brought not just destruction, but cleansing. And sometimes they brought new beginnings. The first rays of morning sun penetrated the lingering storm clouds, casting a soft glow through the mansion's windows. The night's chaos had given way to the ordered efficiency of federal agents documenting evidence and medical professionals attending to Charles. Mary hadn't left his side, watching as Dr. Harrison supervised the administration of drugs to safely counteract the cocktail of substances Isabelle had been using to keep Charles subdued. The recovery process will be gradual, Harrison explained, checking Charles's responses. We need to be careful about how quickly we withdraw the paralyzing agents. Too fast could cause shock, too slow could prolong the weakness. Charles's fingers twitched against Mary's hand. Worth it. Save your strength, she told him softly. We have time now. Sarah Thompson entered the room, her FBI badge catching the morning light. The former nurse's professional demeanor softened as she approached Charles's bed. "I'm sorry it took so long to build our case. We needed to understand the full scope of their operation." "How many other patients?" Mary asked, dreading the answer. 7 facilities, 43 patients total." Sarah's voice was grim. "Most in various stages of induced paralysis, while Isabelle and Robert's team tested their experimental drugs. We're coordinating with medical teams at each location now." Charles's heart rate increased slightly, his fingers tapping with urgent purpose. "Help them." "We will," Mary assured him. "Your resources, your influence, we'll make sure every victim gets the best care possible." Jenny appeared with fresh coffee for everyone, accompanied by Michael. The elderly butler's eyes were red from lack of sleep, but he carried himself with dignity. "Mr. Peters is awake and recovering at Massachusetts General," he reported. "The substance they used on him was mild, meant to ensure he'd miss the board meeting. Nothing more. He's already provided a statement about their attempts to pressure him into approving the merger." "And the board meeting?" Mary asked. "Cancelled," Sarah smiled. "Instead, the board members are gathering for an emergency session this afternoon. They've been briefed on the situation and are preparing to implement protective measures for the company while Charles recovers." A soft meow announced Artemis's arrival. The Siamese cat jumped onto Charles's bed, settling into his usual spot. With an air of satisfaction, Charles's lips twitched, the closest he could manage to a smile yet. Dr. Harrison checked the latest blood work results on his tablet. "The drug levels are dropping appropriately. Charles, try moving your right hand again." They watched as Charles's fingers slowly curled into a loose fist. The movement was weak, trembling, but deliberately controlled. Mary felt tears in her eyes, happy ones this time. "I've contacted Dr. Elena Martinez," Harrison continued. "She's the leading expert in neuromuscular recovery. She's flying in from Johns Hopkins this afternoon to consult on Charles's rehabilitation program." "And the evidence?" Mary asked Sarah. "Overwhelming," Sarah confirmed. "The files you found in the vault, combined with Dr. Harrison's documentation and the records we seized from their other facilities. It's all being processed. Isabelle and Robert aren't going anywhere except federal prison." "What about their claims?" Jenny asked quietly. "About the drugs having legitimate medical potential." Harrison sighed. "Some of their research might eventually prove valuable if properly tested and ethically developed. But they crossed too many lines, hurt too many people. They forgot that medicine is about helping people, not controlling them." Charles's fingers tapped again. "Make right." Mary understood immediately. "You want to fund legitimate research? Find ethical ways to help people with the treatments?" "One good." His eyes showed determination despite his exhaustion. A commotion in the hallway drew their attention. Lucas had arrived, carrying boxes of legal documents. "The judge signed off on everything," he announced. "The restraining orders are in place, and we've frozen all the accounts Sarah identified as part of their network. Also," he grinned, "you should see the media gathered outside. This story's going to be huge." Charles's fingers tapped rapidly. "No media yet." "Charles is right," Mary agreed. "The other victims and their families deserve privacy while they recover. The story needs to be handled carefully." "Already arranged," Sarah assured them. "We have a press strategy that focuses on the corporate fraud while protecting patient confidentiality. Speaking of which," she turned to Dr. Harrison, "we'll need you to come in for a formal statement soon." Harrison nodded soberly. "I have a lot to answer for. I should have spoken up sooner, should have seen what they were really planning." "Forgive help," Charles tapped. Looking at the doctor with understanding, Mary squeezed Charles's hand gently. "You helped us in the end. That counts for something." Sunlight was now streaming fully through the windows. The storm completely passed. As Mary looked around the room at their unlikely alliance, a federal agent, a butler, two nurses, a doctor seeking redemption, and a lawyer, she felt a profound sense of rightness. They had all played their parts in exposing the truth and stopping Isabelle and Robert's schemes. But more importantly, they had helped save not just Charles, but dozens of other victims. The real work of healing, of making things right, was just beginning. Charles's fingers tapped once more against her hand, slowly but with purpose. "Thank you, stay." Mary smiled, remembering their past, acknowledging their present, and looking toward their future. "Yes," she said simply. "I'll stay." Artemis purred loudly, as if approving of this development, while outside the mansion's windows, the garden began to dry in the morning sun, renewed and refreshed after the cleansing storm. A week after the arrests, the Morgan mansion had transformed, from a site of conspiracy to a center of healing. The medical suite now housed state-of-the-art rehabilitation equipment, and the library had become a command center for coordinating care for all the victims of Isabelle and Robert's scheme. Mary stood in the garden, taking a brief break from her duties, when Michael approached with a cup of tea. "Dr. Martinez is here for the morning evaluation," he informed her. "Mr. Morgan is asking for you." In Charles's room, Dr. Elena Martinez was reviewing his progress with evident satisfaction. "The improvement in your muscle response is remarkable," she said, making notes on her tablet. "Whatever else Isabelle and Robert did, their drug formulation preserved your muscle tissue surprisingly well. With continued therapy, I expect significant recovery." Charles was now able to sit up in bed unassisted, though the effort still taxed him. His speech was returning gradually. Words were difficult, but coming more easily each day. "How others?" he asked, his voice rough from disuse. 3 more patients regained consciousness yesterday," Dr. Martinez reported. "The treatment protocol we developed based on your case is working. Dr. Harrison's cooperation has been invaluable in understanding the drug interactions." Mary entered quietly, watching as Charles worked through his morning exercises. His determination was inspiring. Every small victory celebrated, every setback met with renewed resolve. "Mary," he smiled, the expression growing stronger each day. "Garden? Later?" "If Dr. Martinez approves," she replied, returning his smile. The neurologist nodded. "A short visit to the garden would be good therapy. Just be careful not to overexert yourself." She gathered her equipment. "I'll see you this afternoon for the next session." After she left, Mary helped Charles with his respiratory exercises, another part of his recovery routine. As he worked on controlling his breathing, she updated him on the latest developments. "The board has approved everything," she reported. "The new foundation is being set up to support all the victims and fund ethical research into neurological treatments. Lucas says the paperwork should be finished by next week." "Sarah, news?" Charles asked between breaths. "The investigation is proceeding well. They've arrested 3 more doctors who were involved in the scheme, and Jenny has been amazing. She's coordinating with the families of other victims, helping them understand the recovery process." Charles nodded, then gestured to the window where Artemis lay sunbathing. "Knew all along." Mary laughed softly. "Yes, your cat definitely knew something was wrong. Michael says Artemis used to scratch at the study door whenever Isabelle and Robert were having their secret meetings." A shadow crossed Charles's face at the mention of his former wife. Mary understood. The betrayal went beyond financial fraud or corporate espionage. Isabelle had taken advantage of his trust, used his own resources to hurt others, all while keeping him prisoner in his own body. "Need tell you," Charles said, reaching for her hand. His grip was stronger now, more sure. "All time trapped. Thought of you?" Mary felt her heart tighten. "Charles, no. he insisted, focusing on forming the words. Need say, was fooled before, lost what mattered. We both made mistakes, Mary said gently, but that's the past. Future, better, he managed, his eyes conveying what his limited speech couldn't yet express. Their moment was interrupted by Michael announcing the arrival of an unexpected visitor, Mr. Peters, looking much recovered from his drugging, carrying a thick folder of documents. Charles, my friend, Peters said warmly, taking a seat beside the bed. The board wanted me to personally deliver this. We've implemented all the protective measures you requested. The company's resources are now legally secured for their intended purpose. Charles smiled. Good. People first. Yes, helping people first. Something Isabelle and Robert never understood. Peters shook his head sadly. The pharmaceutical division they were secretly developing. The potential was remarkable, but their methods were unconscionable. We'll do it right this time, Mary assured them both. Dr. Harrison has already identified several promising treatments that can be developed ethically, with proper trials and oversight. Speaking of doing things right, Peters said, producing another document, the board would like you, Mary, to serve as director of the new foundation. Your medical background, combined with your intimate understanding of this situation, makes you uniquely qualified. Mary was stunned. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Charles encouraged, his voice stronger with emotion. Trust you. Looking at Charles, seeing the faith in his eyes, Mary felt a surge of certainty. This was an opportunity to help ensure no one else would suffer as he had, to transform a story of greed and betrayal into one of healing and hope. Yes, she said firmly, I'll do it. Later that afternoon, as promised, Mary helped Charles make his first journey to the garden since regaining consciousness. The September air was crisp, carrying the first hints of autumn. They sat together, among the roses, Artemis prowling protectively nearby, while Charles worked on his speech exercises. Each word was a small victory, each sentence a step toward reclaiming his voice, but it was the words he managed without struggle that meant the most to Mary. Thank you for believing. The garden had always been their special place, Mary reflected. Years ago, they had planned their future here. Now, watching Charles determinedly work toward his recovery, she realized they were planning a new future, different from what they had imagined back then, but perhaps more meaningful for all they had overcome. Some broken things, when mended, became stronger at the broken places. Looking at Charles, seeing his unwavering spirit despite all he had endured, Mary knew they were proof of that truth. 1 month after Isabelle and Robert's arrests, the Morgan mansion hosted a different kind of gathering. The grand dining room, once the scene of corporate power dinners, now held a support group meeting for families of the victims. Charles, now able to walk short distances with a cane, insisted on attending. Each story matters, he had told Mary that morning, his speech clearer after weeks of therapy. Need to hear. Need to help. Mary watched from the doorway as Charles listened to each family's experience. A mother whose daughter had been kept in an induced coma for experimental drug trials. A husband whose wife had been silenced when she discovered financial irregularities at her hospital. Each story added another layer to the horror of what Isabelle and Robert had done. But there was hope, too. Thanks to Dr. Martinez's treatment protocols, all the victims were showing signs of recovery. The foundation, now fully operational under Mary's direction, was providing comprehensive support. Medical care, therapy, legal assistance, and financial help for those whose lives had been disrupted. Sarah entered quietly, carrying files from her latest FBI briefing. Isabelle and Robert's trial date is set, she whispered to Mary. The evidence is overwhelming. Their lawyers are already talking plea deals. What about the other conspirators? Most are cooperating. Dr. Harrison's testimony has been particularly valuable. The judge is considering his assistance to the investigation as a mitigating factor. Charles's voice rose slightly as he addressed the group. What was done cannot be undone. But together, we build something good, transform pain into purpose. The families listened intently. Charles's story had become a symbol of both the conspiracy's cruelty and the possibility of recovery. His determination to use his resources to help others, even after everything he'd endured, inspired hope. Later that evening, Mary found Charles in the library, reviewing foundation documents. His hands still trembled slightly when he was tired, but his grip on the pen was firm as he signed authorizations for new rehabilitation equipment. "You should rest," she advised, noting the fatigue in his posture. "Soon," he promised. "First, look at this." He handed her a blueprint of the mansion, planning changes, East Wing Rehabilitation Center, help more people. Mary studied the plans, impressed by the detail. The renovation would transform the mansion's East Wing into a state-of-the-art rehabilitation facility while maintaining the historic character of the building. "Michael approves," Charles added with a small smile. "Says house needs healing too." As if summoned, Michael appeared with evening tea and Charles's medication. "The contractors can begin next week," he reported, "and Dr. Martinez has approved the equipment specifications." "What about the garden proposal?" Mary asked. "The therapeutic garden design is finalized," Michael replied. "The landscape architect believes we can maintain most of the original rose garden while adding accessible paths and rehabilitation features." Charles nodded approvingly. Roses remind of hope. Even in winter, they wait for spring. Mary felt warmth spread through her chest at his words. Charles's poetic nature, once hidden behind corporate efficiency, had emerged stronger during his recovery. Perhaps being forced into silence had given him a deeper appreciation for the power of words. "Speaking of the garden," she said, "Doctor, Martinez thinks you're ready to start water therapy. The pool area can be adapted temporarily while the rehabilitation wing is under construction." "Together?" Charles asked, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Yes," she smiled. "I'll be there to help with the exercises." Their relationship had evolved over the past month, growing stronger through shared purpose and renewed understanding. The past, their failed marriage, his affair with Isabelle, the years of hurt and distance, hadn't been forgotten, but had been transformed, like the mansion itself, into something new and purposeful. Artemis jumped onto Charles's lap, purring loudly. The cat had become even more attentive during Charles's recovery, as if making up for the time when his human had been trapped in silence. "Dr. Harrison called," Mary mentioned, taking a seat beside Charles. "The Ethical Review Board has approved the first proper trial of the modified treatment. Used correctly, with proper safeguards and true consent, it could help many people recover from severe trauma." "Good," Charles nodded. "Transform poison into medicine." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the sunset paint the library in warm hues. The room no longer felt haunted by conspiracies and secrets. Like everything else in the mansion, it had been cleansed, renewed, given new purpose. "Mary," Charles said softly, his voice stronger in quiet moments like this, "thank you. Not just for saving, for seeing me, even when silent, for believing in better future." She took his hand, feeling the strength returning to his grip. "You never gave up. Through everything they did to you, you kept fighting, kept trying to communicate." "Had reason," he said, his eyes full of meaning. "Had you." The simple words carried the weight of their shared history, their present understanding, and their future possibilities. Outside, the garden roses bloomed one last time before winter, their fragrance drifting through the open windows, a reminder that beauty could survive the harshest seasons and return stronger than before. Just like love, Mary thought. Just like hope. Just like them. Spring came early to the Massachusetts coast, bringing with it the promise of renewal. The Morgan Mansion, now officially the Morgan Center for Recovery and Healing, was transformed. The East Wing renovation was complete, its facilities already helping dozens of patients. The therapeutic garden bloomed with new life, accessible paths winding through carefully planned healing spaces while preserving the beloved rose garden at its heart. Charles stood at his office window, watching a group of patients working with their therapists in the morning sun. His own recovery had progressed remarkably. He now walked without assistance, his speech was nearly back to normal, and his hands were steady enough to return to his favorite hobby of playing the piano. "The latest progress reports are in," Mary announced, entering with a stack of files. She smiled at the sight of Artemis curled up in his usual spot on Charles's desk, keeping watch over his human. "Dr. Martinez is very pleased with the overall recovery rates. Better than we hoped?" Charles asked, his voice strong and clear. "Much better. The combination of proper medical care, psychological support, and family involvement is making a huge difference." She set down the files and joined him at the window. "The garden therapy program is particularly successful." Charles nodded, remembering his own healing journey in that garden. "Nature has wisdom," he said softly. "The roses taught me patience during recovery. Each day a little stronger, like buds slowly opening." Mary felt warmth spread through her chest at his words. These moments of quiet reflection had become precious to them both. Moments when the renewed depth of their connection shone through. "Sarah called," she said. "The sentencing is next week. Isabelle and Robert's plea deals were accepted, but they're still looking at substantial prison time. Most importantly, they'll never work in healthcare or corporate management again. And Harrison? Reduced sentence given his cooperation. He'll be working with ethical review boards after his release, helping to prevent similar abuses." Mary paused. "He asked to visit, to apologize in person." Charles was quiet for a moment, considering. "Yes," he finally said. "Forgiveness. Part of healing. For everyone." Their conversation was interrupted by Michael announcing the arrival of Jenny and Lucas. The former nurse and the lawyer had become integral parts of the center's operations, Jenny overseeing patient care coordination while Lucas handled the legal aspects of the foundation's expanding work. "The new facility plans are approved," Lucas announced, spreading blueprints across Charles's desk, causing Artemis to give him an annoyed look. "We can break ground on the second location next month." Jenny added her own update. "And the family support program is ready to expand. We've hired 2 more counselors specializing in trauma recovery." Charles smiled at their enthusiasm. What had begun as a response to tragedy had grown into something far more powerful, a comprehensive approach to healing that addressed not just physical recovery, but the emotional and practical needs of patients and families. "Mary," he said, turning to her, "the garden, this evening." She understood immediately. The garden had become their special place again, but different from before, deeper, more meaningful. "Of course." As sunset painted the sky in gentle colors, Charles and Mary walked among the roses. The paths were filled with patients and their families enjoying the peaceful evening, but everyone respectfully gave them space, recognizing the special significance of their evening walks. They reached the heart of the garden, where the oldest roses grew. Here, Charles had insisted on preserving the exact spot where they had first fallen in love so many years ago. Now that spot held a small bench, positioned to catch the last rays of sunlight. "Do you remember?" he asked softly as they sat. "Our first garden conversation? About healing." Mary smiled. You were talking about how gardens can heal spirits, as well as bodies. I thought it was just corporate talk at the time, and now we've proved it true. He took her hand, his grip strong and sure. Mary, these past months, watching you lead the foundation helped so many people. I'm in awe every day. She squeezed his hand. We did it together, all of us. You, me, Michael, Jenny, Lucas, Sarah, even Artemis. Yes, he chuckled. Our clever cat. His expression grew serious. But you're the heart of it all. You saw me when I was silent, believed in me when I couldn't speak, fought for me when I couldn't fight. Charles, he turned to face her fully. I'm not the same man I was before. The silence taught me to listen. The helplessness taught me compassion. The betrayal taught me the true value of trust. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. And through it all, I learned what real love looks like. It looks like you, Mary. Her breath caught as he opened the box, revealing not a diamond ring, but a delicate rose crafted in silver, its petals traced with tiny words. Love blooms again. Will you marry me? He asked simply. Not like before, something new, something deeper, built on who we are now, not who we were then. Tears filled Mary's eyes as she looked at the man before her, not the powerful corporate leader she'd first married, nor the broken victim she'd returned to help, but someone fuller, wiser, more complete. Yes, she whispered, yes. As Charles slipped the ring onto her finger, Artemis appeared from behind a rose bush, settling at their feet with a satisfied purr. Above them, the first stars appeared in the deepening sky, while all around, the garden released the day's warmth in a gentle wave of fragrance. The Morgan mansion had come full circle, from a place of power to a prison of secrets, and finally, to a sanctuary of healing. And in its heart, in this garden where love had first bloomed and now bloomed again, two people who had faced darkness together held hands in the gathering dusk, their future as bright as the stars emerging above them. They had learned that some things, like the roses surrounding them, could survive winter's harshest tests, that love, like healing, sometimes needed to break before growing stronger, and that in the end, it wasn't power or wealth that mattered, but the ability to help others, to foster healing, and to believe in the possibility of renewal. As twilight settled over the garden, Charles and Mary remained on their bench, surrounded by the legacy they had built from tragedy, a place of healing, a monument to resilience, and a testament to love's ability to transform even the darkest circumstances into something beautiful. And in the growing darkness, the roses released their sweetest fragrance as if blessing this new beginning. Hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Give it a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.